Today I am talking with Dr. Carol McMillan, who has led a fascinating life that spans teaching elementary school in Oakland in the 60s to running or working at was it rhesus monkey study in Puerto Rico, to working with the language preservation program of the Colville tribes. Carol has led 4 lifetimes in one lifetime, and she is an anthropologist and a poet and a memoirist. In her recently published memoir, Scriptless, is out with Sidekick Press. And I wanted to have Carol on here to talk a little bit about her experience writing this memoir, the book itself, and what's next. Hi, Carol, welcome.
Hi, it's great to be here.
It's great to have you. What can you tell us about your new book, Scriptless?
Well, it was a long time in coming out. It's interesting. Writing memoir is therapy. You go back and experience all these kinds of things that happen, but it was wonderful to write it. It was really good. It took me to a lot of places that I hadn't visited for a long time. And I'm excited that it's out, and it's really been well received, which is very, very, very gratifying.
Well, absolutely. For those of us who haven't yet read this memoir, it covers the time when Carol basically had a spiritual awakening on her way to join an entomology trip that covered the southern half of Africa in 1967?
67.
1967, and adventured there for quite a few months. Many harrowing and fascinating and amazing stories with the team there, and then returned to find the summer of love in full swing in San Francisco, and the memoir covers sort of integrating those various experiences in a life. And I'm curious what your process was, Carol, for writing something that basically happened quite some time ago, but also has a lot of resonance today. And I'm just wondering, what that process was like for you.
Well, the process was interesting because I've published quite a few professional articles in journals, and I've written poetry all my life. And so when I decided that I was going to write this memoir, it was like, oh, I got A's in English. I can write. I can write these things. Oh, guess what? Narrative prose is a whole different world.
Right. It's tricky to not start with a topic sentence.
A fabulous critique group that really, really, really helped me learn how to write narrative prose well. And so the book is an easy, fun, engaging read. And that's thanks to the critique group that many, many revisions of my chapters. And so I can have something now that I'm quite proud of, but I have to also give credit to those who taught me how to write.
What would you say of all the stories? Now, I having read this, I have my favorite stories that I read in this memoir, but what do you think was your favorite story to write in this memoir and to sort of revisit in your writing? And tell us a little bit about that.
That's an interesting and difficult question because there was a lot of emotion in quite a few different things that I encountered. The most fun were the incidents in Africa. My favorite was the beetle flavored spaghetti. I think I read that anyway. There are just lots of things. The trip across Africa couldn't be done today. Politically, it just couldn't be. We went all together 14,000 miles wandering around basically in the middle of nowhere for 4 months. And, just that Africa isn't there anymore. It just
right. It was 5 or 6.
Those were the most, pardon?
5 or 6 countries you went across, I believe. Or was it even more?
It was, I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I think there were maybe 5 or 6 different countries. Namibia,
yes. And the border crossings were, you couldn't do it today.
Right, right.
To go back to your question, one of my favorite scenes that's really, really well received is when they started the draft for the Vietnam War, and going with my boyfriend to a cafe in Berkeley to be with other people where they had it on TV, and then just that whole scene depicting the draft, the first day of the draft, and what it meant to all of the men that were in that room.
It was
and all of us who cared about the men who were in the room. And it was people who have lived through that have just said, wow, you know, that you got it. That was what it was.
So tense. It's hard for people of my generation and younger to actually imagine what that would be like to basically sit and try and understand whether or not you've just lost the lottery, essentially.
Yeah. And your life, and it's both being killed and killing people. I mean, that's what it meant to get that. And it wasn't hypothetical, you know, it was like the body counts were coming in every day.
Right.
And if you were drafted, you were very likely to be in the thick of it. So it was terrifying.
Right.
And people, you know, that I was hanging out with didn't see a real reason to go over halfway across the world to kill people. I mean, you know, there wasn't a clear reason for why you would want to do this.
Yes. So was that part of why you wrote this book, is wanting to cover that time in history? And I'm just curious, what did motivate the book? All the reasons.
Okay, there's a lot of reasons. Well, as you said, the spiritual epiphany was really, really, really important to me, and it changed. I was raised a little suburban white girl at the end of World War II, so it was all rah-rah, apple pie motherhood, you know, and a woman's role was very, you know, you wanted your best possible outcome was to marry somebody who was doing really well and have your 3-bedroom house with a white picket fence and 2 dogs. And if you really wanted to go out in the world, you might be a secretary or work for the phone company. Or if you're really adventuresome, you could be a teacher or a nurse, but that was about it. And it really prescribed roles, which is why it's called Scriptless, because my older sister took the role, and I wasn't a boy. They wanted a boy for their 2 children, and I came out another girl. And so that role was taken. And so what was the script that I was supposed to live out? And which, you know, I never fit in that role anyway. It was never going to be my role. But coming from that worldview, without really raised without people of color, I mean, seriously. And then the trip to Africa, and just all of this concept of the connectedness of everything, that was what I really got. I mean, I really comprehended the oneness, which is becoming a trite word, but it was just totally new for me. And then coming back, knowing that it's all, you know, like, we got to fix this, and teaching in inner city Oakland. And so I really liked the part in inner city Oakland about my experiences with my 4th grade class, which was mostly Black, and what those kids taught me and my incredible ignorance. But that was wonderful. But I really wanted to tell this because people talk about the 60s like, yeah, drugs and sex and, you know, like blah, 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 blah. Well, the history of what really happened, the flower children were, I don't know how to say this without everybody thinking I'm wacko, but it was like a communal spiritual epiphany. I mean, all of a sudden, everybody got it, that it's about connection. It's about caring, and you can connect with everybody and everything. And that's what really works. And it was beautiful. The flower children, it was love. It really was. And the only drugs then were, you know, pot and weed and LSD, which was, I mean, LSD is serious, but still, it's not an addictive drug like the others.
Right.
And what happened, the big change, was when the mafia came in, and they literally, and I have that in the book, they killed the hippie dealers, and they demanded that people working for them push the hard drugs, and it changed the whole scene into something much, much uglier. But I always separate the flower children out. I think that was a really, really special period.
Special short time. And it's so fascinating as well that, you know, one of the things I appreciated about your memoir was the fact that it was all happening simultaneous. You were having this revelation that you had on your trip, on the other side of the planet. And then you came back all ready to share what you had learned with everyone, and to come to find out that everyone your age had the same epiphany there in San Francisco. So fascinating.
I mean, I ask people my age, okay, how did it happen? What was it? How did you guys figure it out? I had to go around the world to get this. How did you do it?
I'm imagining, though, that with all that was going on in the 60s, and the protests against the protests with the Vietnam War and whatnot, that there's a lot of this book that resonates today. Wondering if you'd like to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things that I really wanted, I mean, I wrote this as a history book, but I wanted it to be super readable, and it was my life, and my life is weird, so I can make that readable.
It's scriptless.
The scriptless, exactly. It People's Park. I mean, people have heard of Kent State, but when we are protesting things, we sweet little college students, everybody loves the little college students. They're so nice and sweet and naive. And then they killed us. And it wasn't just Kent State. James Rector was killed when we were protesting over an unused square block in downtown Berkeley that was owned by the University of California. And it was basically a mud hole. And so everybody decided to make it into a park. And so they did, and planted flowers and made a playground, and it was used by everybody. It was wonderful. And the chancellor of the University of California freaked, and Ronald Reagan was governor of California, and he freaked, and they sent in, I have in the book, because I researched that to find out how many, but one night, literally, I think it was 7 different police reinforcement kinds of groups, just totally swamped it, arrested people, everything. And it was, it was the flower children, and it was peace and love. And so literally there are pictures. And that's one of the things that I have in the book, is just photographs, People's Park, 1968. Everybody needs to look at those photos of literally people putting flowers into rifles and doing everything to try to tell all of the police and everybody there, peace and love, folks. And James Rector got killed, and the guy was doing nothing. I mean, he wasn't even down there. He was sitting on the roof watching with some other friends. Anyway, so yeah, the protests, I haven't seen anything like it since the 60s. Since 68, I haven't seen. I mean, there were some big things, but the worldwide nature of this right now, there have been big movements that have happened in this country with a lot of protests, but the worldwide nature of the protests right now about what's happening in Gaza look more like, and how it may affect the upcoming election. Because certainly the Vietnam War was huge in the elections then.
Absolutely. I'm curious. I know that I hope I can say this. I know that you're working on another memoir, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, just a little bit about what that will cover.
Yes, well, it should be fun, and I'm amazed at how difficult this one is to get really my teeth into. But for my research, for my doctorate, I got into, and that's another story that's in the book, how I got into this, because I didn't like monkeys, but I ended up going and observing for 7 months of my life, being part of a rhesus monkey group. I say I'm Jane Goodall of the rhesus monkeys, but there's a lot of me. I'm not the only Jane Goodall of the rhesus monkeys. But hanging out with a group on an island off the coast of Puerto Rico, and it was started in the 50s as a behavioral research. So the monkeys are interfered with as little as possible, and so you go out there and you don't want to interact with them, but you have to get accepted into their group. And so the working title now is Big Ugly Monkey, because I'm sure that's how they see me. I mean, how could any monkey be that big and that stupid? Because they had to teach me the rules of their society, and they're very good at teaching the rules of their society. So it was a fascinating experience, another life-changing. I mean, truly, by the time I left, well, actually, soon after I got there, I realized these aren't monkeys, because the image of monkey and what you see is a captive animal, way too smart to be captive and absolutely neurotic. So the behavior you see of monkeys in zoos is absolutely neurotic. And when they're in their own world with their own social system, they're brilliant. And I said to Rich Rollins, who was the director of the Caribbean Primate Research Center, who runs the whole thing, I said one day, Richard, they're not monkeys. And he says, no, Carol, I call them hobbits. And he's right. I mean, that's much closer to the reality. So anyway, it should be lots of fun to write, but of course, why was there and the politics of universities and all of that kind of gobbledygook has to be explained and has to be in there.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe, where's wood? Maybe knock on wood. I'm past that and I can just start writing fun little monkey stories.
Well, I've had a
The
chance to
arc
read
of
a
that
few
book
of it.
is me disliking monkeys and these little neurotic things in zoos, and why in the world would I want to go spend 7 months of my life with them, to just totally in awe of sentient beings that we live with. It was like going to another planet and being with an alien species on another planet.
Mm-hmm. So once again, you'll be learning the lessons from the monkeys, I would imagine.
Right on.
Well, I'm curious. So this will be your second memoir, and it's possible that people who will watch this are people who are in the process of writing their own memoirs. And I'm wondering if you have advice for writers who are thrashing their way through that process, because I imagine it's difficult.
It's very difficult, and I think the surprise that I encountered and others who I know who are writing memoir encounter is the depths of something that you uncover in yourself. You're telling a story X number of years later of something that you have a certain memory of. And when you write it down on paper, it shifts and you see it in a slightly different light, and it can be awful. I mean, it can be realizing that this is terrible, but my parents are gone. They were good suburban white liberals, let's put it that way. Coming to terms with the depth of racism in my parents was excruciating. I stopped writing for weeks, and I sobbed. I just sat and sobbed because I'd kind of stuffed it. The incident that really showed it, it was hard at the time and it was awful and I was really angry about it. But then it kind of, but boy, writing it out and realizing it just broke my heart. And it really did. And those kinds of things, you're going to find stuff like that when you write memoir. But you're also going to find really, really cool stuff that's like so much fun to write because you get to live through it again. And it's like, whee.
I'm curious. So I would imagine that in writing memoir, you come around to do you remember things that you did not remember? I mean, do things come back to you that you would have had no reason to remember ever again? Or is it that you come back to memories you still have? It's just that suddenly you have access to the emotions that are around them. Just curious.
Both, all of the above. Luckily, I've been a fanatic journalist I've kept journals since I was 10 years old. And so I have boxes of my journals. And so I had reference that I could go, and look. Unfortunately, some of the most critical times I didn't. But Africa is good because I kept, of course, copious
Right.
writings all the way through Africa. But some of the others, like.
So I'm just curious, for those who don't know, how do you end up with beetle flavored soup? Was it song?
Oh,
Yes.
it's my best story. Okay, so how do I tell this short version? It's not very long, but we'd been in Western Africa in the Namib Desert for over a month, and South Africa for 3 weeks before that, and then we crossed across Botswana, and all of that is desert. It's the Kalahari Desert and the Namib Desert, and it's serious desert. So the first like 3 months of the trip were mostly in desert. And so we crossed it, and I was the anthropologist slash cook. And so we were camping all the time, and I had to cook the dinners all the time, and I had to make the fires. And this is all, I mean, we didn't have Coleman stoves. We were cooking over open fires. And so we got into Eastern Africa, and the first time that we were in a really wet place, and it was just drenched, humid misery. And so we stopped, and the guys, there were just 4 of us at that point, and the guys would go out collecting entomology insects. So that was the point of the trip. And so we finally found a campsite where we weren't like mired in mud and everything. And so the guys went out to collect, and I set up and was, it took me forever to get the fire started, just forever, because everything was wet. And so I finally get the fire started, and it's like the guys are kind of back and they're kind of hungry, and I just got the fire going. And so we had fluorescent lights that we had a door came off of the truck, and it came into a table, and then we had fluorescent lights above that for the workspace. Very cool. And I was making pasta, spaghetti, and I'd put the pasta over on the stove, on the grill over the fire. And then I'd put the sauce over there. And then I was chopping cabbage into a salad. And these little black beetles started coming into the light and falling into my salad. And so, and I'd made the salad dressing too, and it was sitting beside. And so I started picking out the beetles and saying, oh dear, oh dear. And so I picked out the beetles until I was pretty sure it wasn't the cabbage. And then I covered it. And I thought, oh, the salad dressing. And so I went and looked at the salad dressing, and it had some beetles in it. And I pulled out the beetles too and covered that and said, too bad. And then I thought, oh, how close is the fire? Is it still in this? So I go to the fire and I pick up the spaghetti noodles, and sure enough, there's black things. And so I'm picking out all I can pick out, and I'm exhausted. And I look at the sauce, and I think, and so then the guys are coming back, and we're all starving to death. And I thought, well, I just hope that the crunch, if there is any, they were little bitty beetles, you know, attributes to spices or something, and that they're not poisonous. Those are my 2 hopes. So I never told them. If they read this book, they're going to know, because I never told.
Makes for unusual, toothpick situation around the campfire later.
Exactly.
Little
Exactly.
carapaces.
So we had beetle spaghetti.
Oh, fun. Well, having read the book, I know that there are many such fun anecdotes of learning how to live in a trip like that. So we know that you are working on your next memoir, and what else? What's next for you in the writing world?
Well, I've moved to Hawaii now, and so I started a new writers organization here that's called Hawaii Writers Alliance. And it's really growing, and that's super exciting. And we're just as true. There are other writers groups, but we're just, our mission is just being a support group for each other, and met some wonderful people. And so this Saturday we're having a meeting at our end of the island. Hawaii Island, which I live on, is huge, same size as the state of Connecticut. I don't know why everybody equates things to Connecticut, but anyway, it is. And so we've mostly been meeting in Kona, which is about 50 miles from here. So we decided to have a meeting up at this end. There have been torrential rains for a week, and they are forecast to continue. And where we're supposed to be meeting is at a picnic shelter at a beach. And the road to the beach was closed by part of it being washed out. Anyway, sorry, that's an aside. That's my next thing I'm looking forward to, is whether or not we can get to our meeting on Saturday. But it's so exciting. Important. And this island has a lot of really good writers on it, which is fun and exciting.
And it's so important to have writing groups where writers can support one another. I've certainly, I will occasionally try and join a new group and it's all like, oh, well, who publishes you? And the second I start to feel that sort of environment, I'm out. I am just out, because it's so wonderful to see writers at all stages in their careers supporting each other in their divine creative work. And it sounds like that's what you're putting together there with the Hawaii Writers
Yeah.
Alliance. So
I proposed it and 3 of us started it. 4 of us sort of, and this one younger guy, Zach, just took off with it. And so he has been, I credit him with being the main drive up to here, but he's young and he's got a lot of stuff to do. And so he's kind of burning out a little. So it's time for the rest of us to step in and be more present in what we're doing with it.
okay. If someone sees this and is interested in the Hawaii Writers Alliance, should they contact you, or do you have an
Just look on, if you're on Facebook, Hawaii Writers Alliance, just check us out, or go to the website, hawaiiwritersalliance.com.
Oh,
or
fantastic.
.org. No, .com.
Okay,
So
I'll put
and
all
you can
those...
join. Anybody can join. All you just do is say I'm interested, and I push a little button that says accepted.
Okay. So I'll put all those links in the show notes, both on YouTube and on the website, as well as links to you and your website and where people can buy your book, which is available, of course, on the major online outlets, but anywhere books are sold at bookstores. The book is Scriptless by Carol McMillan. And thank you so much for joining us,
Well,
Carol.
thank you so much. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to, was it The Big Ugly Monkey?
The Big Ugly Monkey.
We'll keep an eye out for that.
Everybody has to have a working title, and I hope that one doesn't change. I kind of like it.
I like it too. Thanks so much, Carol.